Welcome to Issues and Answers with Diane Kinderwater. Issues and Answers is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. And now, Issues and Answers with your host, Diane Kinderwater.
Welcome to the program. I'm Diane Kinderwater. Happy New Year to all of you who watch Issues and Answers and KCHF TV. A new year. Wow. Hopefully we have hope, excitement, and of course, we have blessings for you and your family. And today on the show, of course, I have Bob Clark. He's been the morning show host at KKOB's morning program for 18 years now, and he comes here every year to do a review of the year and to look forward to the new year. So it's one of my favorite programs of the year. I just wish it didn't come so fast. I just saw Bob. It seemed like yesterday. Oh, it was a year ago? How time is going fast. So please stay with us as we discuss what happened in 2024. I mean, I remember because I wrote it all down. Do you remember what were the highlights? We're talking about the highlights and then again, look forward to 2025. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the program. One of my best programs of the whole year. I mean, you have programs every single day. Well, this airs every day as well,
Sure.
But every morning you have to fill your slot. What, a 3-hour slot?
Four hours, 4.5 hours. Yeah,
wow,
5,
with guests.
Yeah.
And that's quite a bit.
Sure, but fortunately, there's always a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
I remember in the media business years ago, there used to be this sort of down period, and it's like, boy, we're really scraping the barrel here. But that's just not the case anymore, Diane.
Usually kind of in the summer is a little slow.
Yeah, a little bit,
slow.
yeah.
Wow.
But there's not a slow time anymore.
No slow time.
Especially in a year like the one we just
and how
had.
fast
Yeah.
the year went.
Absolutely.
As I said, I just saw you, Bob.
Yeah,
Of
it
course,
feels like it.
I listen to you every day, but
Yeah.
I just saw you.
I mean, we stay connected. We communicate with each other, but in person, yeah, it's usually this one time out of the year.
And I know our viewers just love this to hear. Kind of nice reminiscing, but it's more than reminiscing. It's talking about all the things that shaped our life. And of course, the biggest was the election.
Yep.
Whew, take it away, Bob Clark.
Well, I mean, nationally and then New Mexico, because they're
Let's start with New Mexico.
two very different stories.
Yeah, let's talk about New Mexico first. Wasn't as exciting as national.
Other than the cluster of states in the New England and the far northeast portion of the country, New Mexico is the only blue on blue on blue on blue state. So, Donald Trump certainly did better in 2024 here in New Mexico than he did in 2020 and even in 26. He did close the gap
Do you
in
think
this
him
election
coming
here
here? I
in New
think he
Mexico.
came here on October 31st.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks before the election.
Couple days before the election.
Yes, it might. Yes, it was. It was just a week prior, and it probably did. It probably helped him. But the gains that he saw among Latino voters, Hispanic voters, especially among men voters in New Mexico, what was interesting about that story and how well, because when he came here, I'm sure he didn't think he was going to win New Mexico, but he was thinking nationally already at that point, and trying to build on the gains that he was seeing among Hispanic voters. But what's interesting is it didn't trickle down the ballot, really, and help the other top of the ballot race, Nella Domenici, in her quest to unseat Martin Heinrich. Now, Martin Heinrich is an incumbent, and in New Mexico, we love our incumbents. So there was that challenge from her perspective as well, but she still ended up.
But a big name, Nella Domenici.
Absolutely.
Big name on the ballot, of course.
And I'll tell you what, and yes, she lost it by about 10 percentage points to Martin Heinrich, but I thought, after getting her feet under her about midsummer in terms of her campaign, I thought overall she did a pretty good job, and really once she was able to hone in and start articulating her message and things like that. But she was never going to have as much money as Martin Heinrich as the
and Gabe Vasquez and Yvette Herald.
And
that was a congresswoman previously.
That was the other race too that a lot of people were watching closely. And so President Trump didn't help bring Yvette Herald over the finish line. So this is the first time in the history of CD2 that a Democrat has won that race back to back. And of course, a lot of that has to do with the redistricting that went on here in New Mexico, because CD2 looks a lot different now than it did just a few years ago.
When Yvette was
and they drew into CD2 the so-called West Metro area and the South Valley of Albuquerque, and it's those vote totals from the Bernalillo County area that really helped to put Gabe Vasquez. But in winning re-election. So there's no question the Republicans, in terms of CD2, are going to have to do some reevaluating in terms of their candidate recruitment.
And Melanie Sansbury versus Steve Jones. Steve Jones was on the program here, but it was nice. Someone
Very
ran
nice
against.
man.
Very nice to throw your hat in and to make the effort to do all that. So.
But even, but she ended up winning by 14 points, somewhere in that neighborhood. So there wasn't a time that long ago where, in a race like that, the Democrat would have won by 20 plus points.
And here in New Mexico, of course, all 42 senators and 112 legislators were up.
Yep.
Not too much change there.
No, pretty much status quo.
Status quo. So New Mexicans must love how we are last in everything on the bad list, and the bad list. We're first.
I think
they must love the status quo.
The Republicans flipped one house on this, one seat in the House side and one seat on the Senate side. And again, the Bernalillo County is where the significant changes have happened. And the fact that Nicole Chavez, the Republican candidate in House 31, they were able to hold on to that seat. And then in Northwest Albuquerque, but this is a seat that also now, after redistricting, goes into Sandoval County. And Sandoval County Commissioner Jay Block was able to flip that seat, and he won. That district reaches into actually the area where I live in Ventana Ranch. So, but other than that, it's pretty much going to be the same in terms of the majority numbers. Big numbers for the Democrats.
They're saying the Democrats really aren't Democrats. They're now the progressives, which is even further left than a Democrat.
Yes.
Progressives have even more of a stronghold in the New Mexico legislature.
Yep, no question about it, especially on the House side. No doubt.
Ooh, big election.
But then nationally, President Trump beating Kamala Harris in just an unprecedented election. Diane, we've never seen anything like this. I don't know if we'll ever see anything like this
We
again.
had a murder attempt, assassination attempt, two of them.
Two of them.
God.
And then we had Biden, there were shots fired.
Biden was in the caucuses, and then he wasn't he wasn't the nominee.
Yeah.
Whoa! What a year! What a fall this was.
Yeah, and a lot of people are wondering, what did Kamala Harris do? She spent $2 billion basically in this election, and there wasn't a single spot. And I saw this in a post-election analysis. There wasn't a single spot in the country where she outperformed what Joe Biden did 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not certainly going to suggest then why did they make the change? There were some serious issues after that first debate in June. You could see why there were concerns about the president and his mental capacity at that point. But clearly, just shifting the campaign over to Kamala Harris was a mistake that just blew up in their face. And President Trump, for all of his warts, people look back to what the circumstances were 4 years ago in this country with the economy, with border security, with the military, and the fact that there was much more peace around the world than there is now. And I think a lot of people were like, you know what? Because the simple question is, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And the answer for most people was, no, I'm not. And I think that really helped to help gravitate voters toward Donald Trump, again, in unprecedented numbers among Hispanic voters nationally. I mean, I think he ended up with about 42% of the Hispanic vote. Those are George W. Bush numbers from 20 years ago when he got about 35 to 40% of the Hispanic vote.
President Bush said here in New Mexico, do you like to be called Hispanics or Latinos? Because nationwide,
Donald Trump said that at the rally, and most people were like, Hispanics.
Hispanics.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
At least the ones that were at the rally.
Said that was funny. So really, as a newsman, you've never unprecedented election.
No, I mean the circumstances of this election.
For so many reasons. I mean, to have a candidate, an assassination on live TV.
Yeah. And it was within millimeters of changing the entire trajectory of the history of our country. And obviously, I mean, more than just this election, but the history of this country, and
the world,
and the world, and the fact that as I was watching election night, because I have to wake up early, but it's like this is one of these nights where I'm going to be on 3 hours sleep if I have to.
And we're thinking, we want to hear the results for 3 years, three nights. Let's take 3 days for the election.
Yeah, a lot of people thought there are going to be some states where it's going to be so razor thin that they're not going to be able to call the race for several days, and that didn't turn out. I mean, Arizona And Nevada still went a couple of more days before it was official, but Donald Trump, in sweeping the so-called blue wall, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, he won in Georgia.
Ohio, I think.
Oh, well, I mean, Ohio, you know, it's funny. There wasn't a time that long ago in national politics where Florida and Ohio were swing states. Not anymore. They are reliably red. I mean, President Trump won Florida by 13 percentage points and about the same in Ohio. He won Texas by a much larger margin this time than he did in 2026 and 2020, by 14 points.
We're looking at 2024, but now since we're on this topic of national politics, any predictions? What about 2025? I mean, we're not going to get a rest. You're not going to get a rest.
Well, look, the issues of the economy and border security were certainly major issues in the presidential election. So we'll see how this plays out in terms of the 60-day legislative session and some of the bills and the policies. Just based on what we're hearing up to this point, the Democrats who are in charge up in Santa Fe in the House and the Senate, and the governor's already one of these governors coming out and saying, "Oh, we're gonna put roadblocks up against anything that the president wants to do." Now, we don't have any statewide elections in 2025, but we do have municipal elections coming up. And in Albuquerque, the mayor's race is going to be at the top of the ballot, and Tim Keller has already announced that he is going to be running for what will be an unprecedented third straight term. There's only one other, Mayor Marty Chavez back in the 2000s, early 2000s. He was going to run for he ran for a third straight term in 2009. It would have, had he won, been his fourth term overall, but he came up short. And the reason he did was because I think there's a mindset from people where even if they kind of like what you're doing for the most part, and they maybe like you personally, I think some people are kind of like, all right, enough already. When you're running for a third straight term, really, even though there aren't term limits, I think a lot of people have that 2 4-year terms thing in their head. So that's going to be a challenge for Mayor Keller coming up this year, just from that perspective. And then when you take into effect that crime is worse than it's ever been before in the city of Albuquerque's history. Violent crime is worse than it's ever been before in the city of Albuquerque. Retail theft and that's worse than it's ever been. And then, of course, homicides continue at a very alarming rate.
But now, as the election showed for the legislature, people like the status quo. They tend to vote the same thing, and I guess it doesn't bother them.
Well, there are some other factors involved in that, but when you're talking about the mayor of the city running, I think there's going to be more of a direct connection between what the voters are seeing. But again, it's all going to depend on who runs against him. Who are the candidates who are going to emerge to run against him? Because if, like 4 years ago, if there's not a viable alternative, then it's not going to be out of the question.
And the election is in November. It used to be in March, I thought. It used to be in March.
No, it was like, it's in November now here in the city of Albuquerque. There are still municipal elections around the state that are in March, but the city of Albuquerque's is in November. So it's going to start to heat up. I think you'll start hearing some names probably in the first few months of 2025. And then, for a city election, I think 6 months is really the heat of the campaign. So that'll start. But unless there is someone who is well-funded, and someone who has good name recognition, and someone who can make an appeal to the voters that it's time for a change, and people see that person as realistic, then Mayor Keller could end up winning a third straight term, regardless of how bad the circumstances are in the city.
And regarding sanctuary cities, which Santa Fe and Albuquerque are, and Denver, now the president may be going after some of these cities, and the governor says, governor says, no, stay out of our state.
Yeah. Well,
we'll see. We're going to see.
I know there's been an awful lot of talk about quote unquote mass deportations, but clearly what they're going to do is the Trump administration is going to start with the current 1.4 million people in the country illegally who have deportation orders attached to them. That's where they're going to start, and local authorities can't stand in the way of that.
And they might be in jail and prisons, so that would be easy to round them up if they're in jail or prisons. So the election was big, unprecedented, just incredible, truly, how many different changes there were in all of these things happening. So we have a new president, we have a legislature starting up, in a couple days, basically.
January 21st is the first day.
And a lot of money, Bob Clark.
Oil and gas revenue.
$800 million
the gift that keeps on
dollars.
giving. I know we have a lot of elected officials who'd love to see nothing more than that industry dry up. tomorrow if they could, but they love to spend the money from it, don't they?
Almost $1 billion new dollars. We have a $10.5 billion budget just in state taxes, our tax dollars, and now
oil and gas revenue and all of the other revenue sources that we have. Yeah, last year was a record budget of I think about 10.2, but all indications are that it's going to be even higher.
And then they say with federal dollars coming in is about $30 billion.
Yeah.
That's running our little state of 2 million people.
We've got a lot of money.
A lot of money.
In the
What's
state
interesting,
of New Mexico.
also,
without seeing a whole lot of return on our investment, by the way.
And the money coming from the federal government, which is our taxpayers still, from COVID money, we're still receiving that, and that's what I understand. They want to start keep spending that. Marty Chavez. They want to spend that before maybe they clawed back. The federal government says you didn't spend that COVID money that we gave you. They may take it back. So I think they want to send it. And that's where
that's a very confusing. I don't know if it's money that we already have, that they have a deadline to spend it.
I've heard it's because changes at the zoo. The one thing is they want to maybe move the zoo. That was a big issue. Or the New Mexico State Fair, I mean.
Well, that is just such a premature. I mean, that's just they're talking about putting a plan together to put a plan together. So we'll see where that goes. But that's going to be years down the road.
I understand.
Believe me, Dan Morning's not packing up the stables and the dorm rooms in Tingley Coliseum. Because first off, when you're talking about moving the state fair and then redeveloping Expo New Mexico, Tingley Coliseum's not going anywhere, and neither's the racetrack or the casino. So you're going to put affordable housing right next to the racetrack? I mean, that's something we'll be talking about next year at this time as still not going anywhere.
2026 or 2025?
Yeah, 2025, 2026.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you got things kind of stirred up there on your radio program talking about. Well, Marty Chavez was on, and he's the infrastructure person.
He's like the senior advisor for the governor.
For the governor, spending money though. That's infrastructure. And I thought, let's fix the roads before we start maybe moving the New Mexico State Fair.
We have billions of dollars that have already been allocated for capital outlay that haven't been spent.
Because we don't have enough people, people to work on the projects to spend it. Okay, well, crime. What a variety of crime. Juveniles that started a year ago at Christmas time when they.
Juvenile crime's been an issue that's been, changing dramatically for many years. But we are at a circumstance right now where we're seeing younger and younger people getting involved in more serious crimes. And the Juvenile Justice Code in New Mexico has not been updated since the early 90s. So District Attorney Sam Bregman has made, along with the sheriff and APD Chief Medina and a lot of other law enforcement officers, officials around the state, they want the state legislature to update the children's code so these kids can start facing real consequences. And what reception they get up in Santa Fe, who knows? But it's something that desperately needs to happen, and it needs to be real reform. And not just sort of like poking around the edges.
Because he was saying the kids who do commit these murders, they just get their hands slapped until they're 18, basically.
Yeah, and for those who are convicted and incarcerated, they pretty much most of them walk out at the age of 21, because under our current juvenile law, and we have what is known as a serious youthful offender law for 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are convicted of first-degree murder, who are charged with first-degree murder. They can end up being tried and serve time as an adult. But that's the only crime that falls into that category. And there are a lot of very violent and very serious crimes that they want to add to that list.
And what happened last Christmas at the juvenile detention
center?
It was
a mini riot. And again,
that's all a mini riot for these kids.
That was a serious situation, but believe me, we have kids out there killing people. So that's a little bit more of a dire situation.
Yeah, and talking about killing, what unusual crimes, murders. A year ago, we had, of course, over a movie ticket, and then we have now a pool game.
Well, that's the other thing too about the homicides we're seeing.
A washing machine at a laundromat.
I mean, what? And then, of course, road rage continues to be an ongoing problem. There was a shooting in broad daylight. A man and a woman were shot and killed by at least one person, maybe more, in another vehicle that they believe started on a road rage incident right there in the area of Coors and I-40. It was on a Sunday afternoon. But those other stories that you're talking about, we've had people die in Albuquerque in the last 12 months in a fight over a movie theater seat. The argument over a pool table at a Northeast Albuquerque bar, and an argument over a laundry mat.
A
washing machine,
at a who's
at a
gonna use it?
laundromat. I mean, the idea
Just
of what people are willing to kill over it is just, the bar is so low that people just resort to. I mean, what used to be settled with an old-fashioned fist fight, now people just pull out a gun and shoot and that's why when it comes to road rage, the advice that everyone gets from law enforcement, and it's great advice, is no matter what the other person's doing, don't engage them, because you don't know what they have with them in their vehicle, and you don't know what they're capable of doing with it.
tough stuff.
It really is.
Tough stuff. In all your interviews and your radio program, are people giving you a reason what's going on? The video games affecting all these people? Just no consequences to their crimes, or just a mentality of hate?
I think social media makes a difference in terms of people posting and using social media. I don't know if someone's watching social media and says, "Oh, I'm going to go kill somebody." But the bottom line is this: is that specifically here in New Mexico, they see that our laws are too lax. I mean, they see people getting arrested for serious crimes and then walking out of jail the very next day. Especially for younger people, they know that they aren't going to face any real consequences. Yeah. And that's why a lot of these gangs keep recruiting younger and younger people to go out and commit crimes. There was a little gang of teens terrorizing a Northeast Albuquerque neighborhood.
Well, and
earlier
also,
this year.
Sure,
but the specific case I'm talking about involved an 11-year-old.
Oh.
And Sam Bregman, they ultimately were arrested, but Sam Bregman, the DA, said there is absolutely nothing in the children's code that provides any guidelines or any authority as to what we can do with an 11-year-old, because lawmakers 30 years ago weren't comprehending the idea that an 11-year-old kid would be involved in shooting a gun, driving cars through the front of a store, ransacking the place with two other teens. So technically, this kid's arrested and charged, but what do you do with him? There's nothing in the law that says what you should or could do with them.
And the kids in Rio Rancho, River's Edge too, just at Christmas time, they were out there holding a gun.
Well, no, so there were two teens who were taking a baseball bat to a couple of cars, smashing their windows, and they had their other friend was holding a gun, pointing it at the front door, just waiting for someone to come out. If the homeowner came out, he was ready to shoot.
Of course, we had a special session in July regarding
dealing with crime. Yeah,
dealing
supposedly.
With crime.
Yeah, nothing happened.
We paid for it. We paid.
Oh, they were up there just a couple of hours.
Yeah, but still, taxpayers paid for them to get there.
That was one of those things.
Everything.
The governor. The governor laid out the agenda she wanted to see lawmakers do, and the Democrats basically said, no, this is not going to happen. So,
also in July, big case in Santa Fe was the Alec Baldwin
case, yeah. That brought international news crews from around the country to Santa Fe. You talk about a bizarre case, but
manslaughter criminal trial.
Ultimately, his charges were dismissed because of misconduct. That might be too strong of a word, but it's really the only word to use, misconduct by the prosecutor. They didn't reveal evidence that they had to the defense before the... I don't think the evidence would have exonerated him, but they just didn't handle it the way you're supposed to, and the judge held the special prosecutors...
I sat in on that trial. He had pretty sharp attorneys. They knew that they weren't given that, and they just used it as a card saying...
Yeah, they knew it before the trial even started. They knew it existed.
They didn't ask for it.
They were just going to wait.
They did not want it.
They were just going to wait for the right moment, and it worked.
They just were able to bring their card in. Also, this summer, of course, we had the fires in Ruidoso.
Yes.
That was big.
Well, 2 years ago, it was the wildfires up in northern New Mexico in Mora County, the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fires, which were started by the federal government. And those are issues they're still dealing with 2 years later in terms of flash flooding and, of course, FEMA slow rolling the help for them. And then this year, earlier this year in the summer, down in Ruidoso, the devastating fires there that may permanently alter just the whole landscape of that. And I say landscape literally, but also figuratively in terms of being a tourist attraction. One of the most beautiful places
in our entire
because
state.
What you're seeing as well with these wildfires, and we still don't have a firm answer on how those started. One of them they say was started by lightning, but the other they believe there's an investigation of some of the fires being human caused down there, but there still haven't been any arrests made or charges filed in that case. But one of the big problems now that you're seeing is, like for a community like Ruidoso, you have permanent residents there, but you have a lot of people who had cabins and would live there part-time during the course of the year. So their cabin burns, and the family gets a check from the insurance company, and they're like, so do we go back there and rebuild? And then just lose it all over again? And then so what people have decided to do is not rebuild. And then for people who are interested in buying land or buying homes down there, they're finding out immediately when they go through the mortgage insurance process they can't get homeowners insurance.
Yeah, it's tough, really tough.
It really
it's
is.
really a tough thing. And then of course in December, the county commission voted on a salary increase.
Well, this is another one of these results of the election. We talk about the people on the ballot, the living, breathing human beings, especially at the top of the ballot, but all of those bond issues and all of those constitutional amendments, sometimes people don't pay enough attention to them. And Constitutional Amendment number 4 was approved by 66% of the voters. Usually these amendments and bonds do pass relatively easy, but what that did was it gave county commissions the authority to deal with pay raises at the county level. Prior to now, it had to be handled by the state legislature. If there were going to be pay raises for a sheriff, for a county clerk, for a county commissioner, it had to be approved by the legislature.
Now they're approving themselves.
And now they have the authority to do it. And boy,
voted
the
for it.
counties, they aren't wasting any time. There are at least 10 counties that have already dealt with it, including Bernalillo County.
And
Yeah, they gave
said-
themselves and then all of the elected officials a 15% raise. So
And they're saying it wasn't a conflict of interest voting for that.
Yeah, I'm not
voting
sure
for
how
your own
that-
raise of our taxpayer, who knows? But we appreciate people serving our
Absolutely.
community as well. We do. appreciate-
Absolutely.
And we appreciate all that you do on KKOB Radio.
well, thank you very much.
In a very
18 years, it's hard to believe. You talk about time flying. I can still remember my first show like it was yesterday. And here it is, 18 years.
Do you remember the topic?
I do.
What was it?
Do you remember when the APD through the Albuquerque Journal first started publishing the photos of people arrested for DWI? Yeah. That was the same month I started, and that was my very first topic in the 9 o'clock hour. The public shaming.
That's shaming
the public
people.
shaming of DWI. They don't do it anymore, but the public shaming of DWI offenders.
We'll have to do a program on why.
It's amazing. Why do I still remember
That's
that?
Great. Bob Clark, thank you again. The asset that you are to our community.
Oh, thank
to
you
our
very much,
entire
Diane.
state,
I appreciate it. It's a privilege.
And to the viewers with your knowledge and your enthusiasm. We do appreciate that. And
Thank
we
you.
appreciate you coming on this program.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Diane.
Thank you. It's fun to reminisce going
Yes.
back and looking ahead. We hope you all have a great 2025. Cross our fingers and pray that it's a good year for all of us. Thanks for watching. Make it a great week. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinderwater is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. To comment on today's program, email us at info@kchftv.org or call us at 505-345-1991. Join us again for Issues and Answers with Diane Kinderwater.